Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. It's still Screamtober. Hi, I'm Carshénah with Versefilmsproductions, and you don't want to miss, we're doing a video a day, every day up until Halloween. This week is horror video games and horror comics. Let's get started. Let's start today's horror video game with The Last of Us. The Last of Us is a third-person action-adventure survival horror video game created exclusively for PlayStation 3 and was later remastered for the PlayStation 4. The game was developed by a portion of the employees at Naughty Dog, while the other half of the company went to develop Uncharted 3: Drake's Deception. It was established for the purpose of creating new intellectual property, as well as continuing the Uncharted series simultaneously. Set in the post-apocalyptic United States, the game tells the story of survivors Joel and Ellie as they work together to survive their westward journey across what remains of the country to find a possible cure for the modern fungal plague that has nearly decimated the entire human race. On May 15, 2013, The Last of Us had gone gold, meaning all development of the game had been completed and mass manufacturing had begun. The Last of Us was scheduled to be released on May 7, 2013, but was pushed back to 6 weeks. The game was released on June 14, 2013, in all countries except Japan, where it was released on June 20, 2013. The Last of Us takes place in the year 2033, 20 years after a fungal-based brain-altering pandemic has spread and infected over 60% of the world's population. Since the outbreak, the world has gone into a state of panic and frenzy as officials try to fix and keep the situation under control. When the World Health Organization's attempts to procure a vaccine fail, the United States government does away with the bureaucrats in power and the establishment of civilian government. The country is turned into a police state under the control of Homeland Security, and the military and cities across the nation are placed under martial law one by one. Survivors of the pandemic are assigned to designated quarantine zones that are supposed to separate them from the infected and keep them safe. Sometime within the 20 years leading up to the main events of the game, a paramilitary group calling themselves the Fireflies is established, with their main goal being the restoration of lawful government in the United States, as well as finding and producing a vaccine for the cordyceps brain infection. The Fireflies attack the military on occasion and encourage uprisings. Let's go over the main characters of the game. Joel, voiced by Troy Baker, the protagonist of the game. Joel is a survivor of the cordyceps brain infection outbreak, taking residence in the Boston quarantine zone, embittered and hardened by the death of his young daughter, Sarah. Joel operates as a black market smuggler, dealing in contraband, taking numerous dehumanizing jobs over the years to survive in his new post-pandemic world. He has only a few moral boundaries left to cross. Unfortunately for him, he is thrust into the middle of the nightmare that the world has become when he is asked by the leader of the Fireflies, Marlene, to look after Ellie. Throughout the game, Joel slowly develops an unbreakable bond with Ellie and a desire to once again open up his emotions that he has suppressed for so many years. Ellie, voiced by Ashley Johnson. The deuterogenist of the game, Ellie is a brave 14-year-old girl that has grown up in this harsh world, and it is all that she has ever known. Ellie is immune to the cordyceps strain, and because of this, the Fireflies, an anti-government organization, seek to reverse engineer a vaccine through her. She and Joel travel across the post-pandemic United States to reach the Fireflies. She helps the players through the game in many ways, leading a hand in combat and assisting through areas of the game that would otherwise be inaccessible. She frequently expresses curiosity about the remnants of a world that no longer exists. Let's talk about the combat in the game. The Last of Us is a third-person shooter where the player's means of offense are a range of weapons, both projectile and melee. The lethality of weapons is very high, as in reality. Players take control of Joel, while Ellie being an AI for most of the game. However, the player switches characters in the later parts of the game. Now let's move on to The Last of Us Part 2, the sequel. The Last of Us Part 2 is a third-person action-adventure survival horror video game developed by Naughty Dog and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment. It was released on June 19th of 2020. The game is the sequel to The Last of Us and picks up the story of Ellie and Joel 5 years after the events of the original game. quick synopsis. Ellie, who is now 19 years old, returns as the protagonist whom players assume control of. Joel is in his mid-50s, also returns as a playable character, as does Abby Anderson, who functions as the game's false protagonist. Joel and Ellie, having settled down in Tommy's settlement, live in relative peace within the thriving community. While there, Ellie has even managed to form friendships with Dina and Jesse. However, the survivors face constant threats from the infected and other hostile survivors. When a tragic event disrupts the tranquility of her life, a hate-filled Ellie embarks on a journey to Seattle in a search for vengeance to carry out justice. As she hunts down those responsible one by one, she is confronted with the traumatizing physical and emotional consequences of her actions. Let's check out the reveal trailer. The trailer opens with a sequence of 5 shots of a forested area. The rusty remains of an abandoned vehicle and a tree with claw marks in its trunk are shown as the camera pans outwards. Some rundown houses then appear in the foreground before an old stop road sign with the Firefly logo graffitied on it comes into view. Then the scene changes to Ellie sat on a bed, tuning and subsequently playing an acoustic guitar as she sings Through the Valley by Sean James. The next shot reveals a tattoo on her arm as the camera cuts around the room, showing among many other things an open window to Ellie's left. Some have noted the resemblance between this window and the window depicted on the main menu screen of the original game. While the music continues, a male figure enters through the front door, initially nothing more than a silhouette. The man walks through the house with the revolver in his right hand, taking stock of the several dead bodies littered in the building, implied to have been killed by Ellie. None of the bodies show obvious signs of infection by the CBI from the original game. Ellie was originally intended to be the sole playable character in the game's single-player campaign. However, this changed at some point before release, with Joel, Ellie, and Abby all being playable for portions of the game. The game also features new enemy types as well. It contains 2 new infected types. The first is the Shambler type that emits acidic spores similar to bloaters, except these are also exhibited immediately after death. Further, there is also a special unique boss infected that is fought while playing as Abby. Further, there are also a new human enemy type that resemble the brute enemies encountered in the Uncharted series, another game series created by Naughty Dog. Naughty Dog has won numerous awards for The Last of Us for both Part 1 and Part 2, and they also have an HBO series coming out in the near future. We hope to see it soon, as we will make a great review for this game. I hope that you've been enjoying SCREAMTOBER right here on the channel. I'm Carshénah with versefilmsproductions, so hit that notification bell as we do a video a day, every day, up until Halloween. We hope to see you in the next one. Take care and have a great scare.